Hello, everybody. Good morning. Thanks for those that made it down early. I know a few of you may have had a heavy night last night. I'm Michael McKenna. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Final Pixel. We are a virtual production company. We specialize in end-to-end virtual production. So from concept to final pixel is how we describe it. What we've found over the last couple of years, as we've grew this company through the pandemic, is that virtual production is a method. You know, it's based in technology and based in using LED walls like this and all the kind of important new technology that goes into trying to put together a stage. But actually, to achieve the best results, you have to take an end-to-end approach, and you have to think about the whole method of production. So it's very different to normal film production. It requires a different involvement, a different kind of involvement for the production designer and the director and the DOP much earlier in the process than they might used to be getting involved in. And so yeah, we've really found that taking this end-to-end approach has got the best results for clients and probably allowed us to achieve final pixel more often than not on set, which, for those of you who don't know what that means, it's about coming away from the shoot with an actual the final finished product. So I think about 90 to 95% of our work has came away as final pixel, so that it's required very minimal, if any, post work. So move on. So what am I going to talk about? So end-to-end workflow, we're going to touch on that. The creative process for a real-time VAD, and talent and how we support all this. Now, the ethos of our company is really to kind of share as much as possible about what we're learning, because we think we're at this real kind of early innovative period of virtual production where it's important to kind of get as much as we can out there and share that as much as possible with other people who are trying to come into the industry or those who are working already. So I'm going to go deep in here. I'm going to go into our workflow and processes, and hopefully you guys find something interesting to come out of it. And there'll be some time for questions at the end if anyone wants to ask anything.
Family to me are the people that show you unconditional love and support.
So our background is live action filmmaking. We're not a VFX company. We've not came from that kind of world. We're much more producers, filmmakers, used to putting together shoots to get the best result for client or script or concept creative. What that means in practice, though, is we've done projects like this, which is for a client where we recreated the rooftop of their New York office in virtual production with LED wall. And this little demo here gives you an idea of the kind of join between physical and virtual world that we're trying to achieve in a lot of our shoots. We actually done a class recently for some 11 to 18-year-old students, and we got them to come up and try and figure out where they thought the join was. So they came up and they pointed, and a lot of them pointed along that line at the back, but as you can see now, it's just right there behind the planters. But this is what excites us about virtual production, is that you can create these worlds which are physical world blended with the virtual, and importantly, creating a lot of parallax and realistic kind of movement so that you feel like you're actually in this location, in this environment. Now here's a bit more about that project.
Just remember where we're going, and remember where we've been, and the world will dance around us. They wanna know what we've got.
So as you can see on that project, a lot of those environments were full 3D environments that were created with Unreal Engine, and all of those environments had to be designed from scratch. They were not based on a real location, they were based on an idea of a location. You know, there was a brief, there was a client brief, there was some, you know, references, but there wasn't really any exact location to copy. And that, you know, presents some challenges with virtual production. That means that we have a design process that has to come really early on now, and you know, in the whole VFX process, which can often be quite truncated, you know, very shortened, because we're trying to do a lot before we get into production and before we get on set. So we're finding this design process in particular is the one that I wanted to kind of delve into a bit more, and you know, coming here today, and there's a lot around the technology and everything, but you know, underpinning all that with virtual production is, you know, particularly to get the best out of it with these kind of 3D models with Unreal Engine, is a new sort of approach to design. So this is like a simplified workflow for us. So creative development, that's where we, you know, start with the concept and the ideas. Production design is our build phase. Previs, which, you know, having debates about whether it's previs or techvis with a lot of people these days, but it's somewhere between previs and techvis. On-set workflow, and then post-production. So I'm going to focus on the first two of these today. Now this is where I think as a company and how we've came to virtual production, we are potentially a bit different. We have a VAD, so our virtual art department builds all the content. And our VAD supervisor looks across the creative development, production design, and then there's like an interface on the previs side where it starts to get handed over to the onset virtual production supervisor. I think at the moment a lot of companies involved in VP are maybe one or the other, but what we do is join that all up under a director of VP and a VP producer that's overseeing the whole process. So this means that we have insight, you know, from the earliest stage of creative development is into what sort of challenges we might have on set when it comes to shooting. And we create a kind of constant feedback loop between the VAD and the OSVP and testing and R&D, etc., so that when we do get on stage, we know that we are really confident about the results that we can achieve because we've already planned it all out. So I'll go into a bit more detail on that. So creative development starts with concept and ideation. Scripting treatment, we'll start with an initial virtual production breakdown. So that would be like a breakdown of all the environments that we're planning to shoot. It might, you know, in something longer form, look like a VFX breakdown where it goes by all the locations and then separates all those out by, you know, which will be virtual, which will be physical. So we start off with that initial VP breakdown, which gives us an idea of what environments we're going to have to create. We then quite quickly move to mood boards and reference images. Storyboarding usually comes along after that. And then this thing is really key for our process, which is the environment sketch or concept design. Now, when I'm talking about these projects, typically we might be on a kind of 6 to 8 week lead time ahead of the shoot because we've done quite a lot in short form commercials. So we've had to kind of refine this process over and over again. And we found that, you know, agreeing on the environment sketch or the concept design is really, really, really important. You kind of want to front load as much of your design process, you know, to that early phase rather than designing further down the line, or even worse, designing when you get on set. And that's usually where problems start to occur on VP shoots. So here's some examples, like creative direction. it's as simple as that. Here's some examples of a street that we're going to build, a kind of crime alley, that we're calling it. So that concept design, that environment sketch, is often, we've tried a number of different ways of doing this, and we've found that the traditional approach of doing like a 2D concept, which could be concept art, or it could be, some references put together, or something Photoshop put together, is good, and it can sort of get everyone on the same page. But as you go to translate from a 2D image, a 2D design, to actually a 3D environment, there's a lot that changes, obviously, between the two. So what our client, might have thought they were getting when they were doing the concept design can often look quite different, once you get into actual 3D, because we're building 3D environments here. This isn't just a backplate or just a static image, or like a plate for VFX. It's an actual fully immersive 3D environment, which at the point we're designing it, the shots have not been decided. So this is how the process is so different compared to traditional filmmaking. We're not designing this to shots. We're designing this to an environment, to a location. So the director might decide to shoot at any point in this 3D environment. We've got some rough ideas, but we've not totally locked down exactly every angle they're going to shoot. So we have to kind of agree on a 3D model of a location. And one of the things we've started to do to sort of help with that is do a grey box. So some of you will be familiar with grey box models, which you use to do layout. Yep. And but what works quite well, one, you get the layout with the grey box model, which is good. But then we can do a paint over. So taking something like Photoshop or another kind of any art tool, and then almost doing a paint over of what we think the environment might look like. So we're not building the full 3D. We're not texture mapping everything. We're not doing all that yet. But we're trying to lock down as early as possible the layout and the look of what that 3D environment is going to be. So again, this would just be my recommendation. If anyone's doing this for virtual production, get ahead of the design process. Bring it forward as far as you can. Bring decisions forward on things, and then manage your production team and client, through that process, so that they understand how much scope they have. And it's almost like a funnel. You kind of start at this point, and there's a really massively wide kind of scope in terms of things you can change and create, and then that's going to thin down and taper out as you go through the process. So this is the other point I wanted to make here around end-to-end workflow. So what we do right at the start, and I think this came up yesterday on one of the calls as well, on one of the panels, we actually do a project checklist. So this is a kind of something that we keep adding to with every shoot, basically. But it's using the findings that we've picked up from doing so many virtual production shoots, and then using those to help sort of guide where we might find challenging areas. So for example, in the VAD approach, we'll look at what are the kind of key troublesome areas that you might find with Unreal that can cause problems on set. And examples of that might be particle effects, or does it have video? Is there going to be flowing water? Is there going to be animation? There's some really key questions that you can try and flush out really early on in that design VAD process when you're still discussing this, and then feed that through to the OSVP, the on-set virtual production technical team and workflow, so that we know really early on, okay, there's going to be some animation in this scene, there's going to be something quite different, we're going to be using metahumans, we're going to be using mocap. Then we can start planning for that right at the start, and then build that into the process of the VAD all the way through. So again, when we get on set, there's no surprises, or everyone's kind of aware of the process, and then ultimately that means our clients are really happy with what they get. And this is what this is all about. We're managing the experience for our clients and the teams that we work with, so that they come away with exactly what they thought they were going to get. And with virtual production at the moment, that can be a real challenge, because there is so much R&D going on, and it's not always obvious, and sometimes there is over-promising, in terms of what can be done or what people expect can be done. So, and then, another element here at this point is, production consideration. So not only are we joining up the VAD and the OSVP, but our VP producer is looking across the whole process and saying, okay, now what other elements do I need to make sure get factored into the schedule or to the budget that's coming out of this design process? So all these things are happening in parallel. This is a really, good example of an environment sketch. So very quick to do. Gets everyone around understanding, okay, well, this is what we're looking at. It's not a fully rendered 3D image or anything like that. It's here to get everyone on the same page as to, okay, well, what is this going to look like? What are the key features? And then this was the 3D environment that came from that sketch. So, there was a lot of sort of changes between the environment sketch and then the final environment. But you can see, that we had that kind of key thing to work around, and eventually that's what it looked like. One of the key things in this one as well was this subway entrance here had, they wanted to show some video on the billboard there, but they didn't know yet what they were going to show. And again, because we were involved, right at the start, end to end between VAD and OSVP, we could plan for that. What we done was we put green on that billboard so that when it came to the shoot, we could comp in a 2D, we could comp in a video essentially of whatever they wanted. And again, that was just all seamless. So, it's
play by the rules.
I know, right?
It's worth saying on that shoot that it was 4 locations in one day. We shot that in Hollywood, and the talent could literally just drive down the road to stage and cover 4 locations in one shoot. And this is one of the big benefits about virtual production that we're trying to show to all sorts of different clients at the moment, from commercials, advertising, all the way through to film and TV. Something weird's going there. There we go. Production design. So creative development, we now move into production design. It starts with the production designer coming on board as early as possible. Again, we've just found this in every shoot, we always wished the production designer got involved sooner. So we try, as soon as we start conversations, we have a VAD kickoff meeting that's usually, okay, who's the production designer? Do we have someone in yet? Does the client understand that we have to bring in someone to help work on the art and how the virtual and the physical is going to blend together? We have to do that as soon as possible. Because again, this is a design process, and that you really want to have them involved in all these key decisions. And someone used a term yesterday about forks in the road, and I think this is another kind of key fork in the road, is that the decisions that get made at that really early point can influence the whole process, and again influence your ability to kind of come away with the highest production value shoot at the end. So bring them on as soon as possible. Like I say, we talked about grey box model. If we've not done that yet, we would do that as part of a layout process before then getting into modelling. Again, with the modelling and the creation of the environments, we take this end-to-end approach again, where we try and manage our client all the way through this. So we have a really structured review process, which is run by producers and coordinators, very much like a traditional VFX pipeline, but it's all in pre-production. So we use ShotGrid, and we've redesigned ShotGrid to work for virtual production, in the sense that we've created a custom version which allows us to do reviews of environments rather than shots. So at this phase as well, we've got the file management handoffs and protocols to be set. There's a really kind of important point around file management that I can't stress enough with virtual production, is that you have to understand and know what all the handoffs are at what phase of the process. All the data in out, is really important to pin down. because this is again one of the kind of key areas where things can fall down. Sometimes just due to bandwidth as well. If you've not predicted, if you've not thought about it for a remote workflow, how you're going to make sure you get that 20 gigabyte file to the stage before they can play it, and they've only got a really rubbish Wi-Fi, then it's not going to work. So anyway, file management handoff is a big area. I could do a whole session on that, honestly, but I can't stress enough. Like if you're working with a VAD and you're working on a stage, make sure everyone is really super clear on what the delivery requirements are, when they're happening, and who's doing what, and importantly who. This is all underpinned by people, so we have to make sure that individuals understand their own responsibilities in this process. Like I say, VP producers working in tandem with the OSVP. We've got technical and workflow, so there's this kind of link with the VAD continuing, and then more production considerations are coming up. Here's another example environment sketch, obviously of a cave. This was like the layout, work in progress, and that was the finished model that we shot on. So then just to kind of, go in a bit deeper. So some of the tools that we're using to do this, a lot of the modeling is done in Maya, 3ds Max, Substance. We're using a bit of Houdini, where a lot of the shoots we do are like a 6 to 8 week turnaround, like I say, so there's often not enough time to maybe set everything up to do it in Houdini. But it's definitely, obviously a really powerful tool for when you've got the time to set up all the procedural. Unreal Engine 5, we're now pretty much moved to Unreal Engine 5, where there's actually a shoot happening next week, which is the first one we've supported using 5, so hopefully that will go as well. We're also using Unreal Engine 5 in the VAD for non-VP work, so we also do VFX with Unreal for clients like TV clients, where we're creating environments that traditionally might have been done in a normal CG pipeline. We're doing it all in real time. And then when it comes to production management, like I say, we use ShotGrid. We've created our own custom ShotGrid. We use LucidLink, which is where the AWS kind of link comes in, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Perforce for source control, and TeamViewer is often quite useful for remoting in, a bit like Parsec, if you're familiar with Parsec. Here's the nice diagram. Everyone likes the diagram, right? This is one that we done for a case study for Perforce recently, actually, when we were talking about our remote workflow. And I should have said this at the start. We're a lot of the workflows we do are entirely remote. Our team is all over the world, in London, in the UK, in Europe, in the US, East Coast, West Coast. We've got people all over. We've just been supporting a shoot in Australia. We've been supporting tests in Brazil recently as well. So we've really grew up as a remote business, and as a result, we just kind of had to figure out the right combination of third-party apps, really, rather than build our own, because there was enough R&D to do with virtual production. So we've put together this kind of model, which is working really well and really smooth. So just to share it, it's Perforce is our main depot, if you like, for our environments, and this is becoming quite common now. I think most people doing virtual production tend to be using Perforce, and we just find that obviously that gives us the ability to manage change control really tightly, but also allows us to work as remote support to stages. So quite a lot of the shoots we've done, particularly during the pandemic, we would maybe have one technical artist on the set, or maybe two technical artists, and all the VAD remotely. So the technical artist would pass the notes back to the VAD, and the VAD would work overnight, turn around the notes, get them back, so the next morning they come in and any changes will be made to the scene. And using Perforce has been, critical for that. I will come on to some of the challenges using that as well. And then LucidLink, just to highlight, LucidLink is, I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but it's a file management software. It's a cloud-based file management. And it's just been really quite revolutionary for us. The way it works is kind of very different because we're a global company, like I say, some of the traditional sort of cloud-based systems were proving a little bit slow. Whereas LucidLink, I couldn't explain the kind of black magic that goes into it, but the way it works is that is constantly updating little kind of parts of your file so that I can't explain the full technical. We should get someone from Lucid to explain it, but it's been really good for us. It's like instant, so someone in New York drops a file into the server, is instantly available on my machine in London, and then likewise, for working in Australia or whatever. So in terms of just sharing elements of a production, maybe there's just a 3D model or just a sort of other support that we have to do in terms of, I don't know, concept designs or briefs or all sorts of things. Lucid has been really great for just making that a much smoother, faster process. And that's all underpinned by AWS Cloud, so that's hosted on the cloud. I talked a bit about multiple locations already, and that one. So challenges. So like I say, integration is really key, like having this kind of seamless process between your design phase, pre-production and production. The most time problems have came up on shoots is where that integration has not existed, or there's been some things that were unplanned for or could have been planned for but weren't. Bandwidth is like, virtual machines are great in theory, and we will be using virtual machines in the future. We still just have problems with local bandwidth all the time. We've shot at multiple different stages. We put up stages. We've popped up stages in London, New York, and LA, and these are often really large stages in terms of 60 foot by 20 foot high. But sometimes, like the internet at the stage is just not as good as you would hope, and there's an element of trying to piece together all the different the jigsaw puzzle of trying to put together a shoot, and internet sometimes doesn't trump the location for talent, for example. So sometimes we find the bandwidth can still be a problem with in out. File management and handoffs, there's a real drill around kind of being able to make sure that everyone knows what they're delivering to whom when. But also when it comes to Perforce and multi-user, like if anyone's used multi-user in Unreal, you'll find that there's almost a system, a way of doing things, and if you do it in the right order, then it'll work. If you do it in the wrong order, then you end up in problems. So again, it's like having procedures and workflows on set so that we make sure that everyone kind of knows the right order to do things. But often, again, that's where things can break down a bit, particularly under the kind of pressure of a shoot. And onboarding of crew, like one of the biggest things at the moment is the time it takes to onboard new crew, directors, DOPs, everyone to virtual production. So a few conclusions. We're all about client experience. Like I say, we're trying to produce the best production value, and we want our clients to be delighted about that. So that is our priority. We do not underestimate some of the complexities of a design process of virtual production. The end-to-end workflow really helps mitigate problems before they arise. We often find, with this kind of fast turnaround of projects, the sort of challenging client demands that come from that, it's really essential to have this end-to-end workflow. Plan for bottlenecks and find and grow great talent. So I just wanted to finish on that piece actually, around finding and growing talent. We've launched an academy, and we launched this back in November last year, and we're continuing to grow it, and we've kind of focused on the areas where there's like real shortages of great people at the moment in terms of on-set technical artists, for example. And that's been one of the first kind of courses that we've been rolling out. We're now an Epic authorized training center. We're teaching Unreal across the piece. But we've also begun teaching younger age groups as well. So last week, was it 2 weeks ago, we took 500 students as part of a summer school through the process of designing their first metahuman. So we were introducing them to Unreal. We wanted to give them something that they could do in like 45 minutes, so quite quick. They got an introduction to virtual production right at the start, and then we took them through this, process, and the enthusiasm in the room was like electric at times. It was brilliant, and I think by doing that at this age group, before maybe they've like forked into science versus art, we're like combining the two together, and they don't know any different, So it was really a fascinating process, and today I've now got the results from that, which is all these metahumans that were made by these kids, which, I think is pretty fantastic. This one is Irene, who's in the middle. And yeah, there's all these lovely metahumans that have been created, as I say, within about an hour each across the 4 days, where we had 500 students come through the academy. So it's great. And yeah, thank you. I think I'm over time probably now, so I don't know if I've got time for questions.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Thanks, Eric.
And educating a new community or young generation, getting them exciting now, so important.
Oh, yeah, totally agree.
The educational issues we're facing right now, the demands, I've got actual professors that are complaining that students, before they barely finish their classes, are making more money than they do. So there's a huge demand out there right now for people in the field, and
That's definitely
appreciate
true.
your hard work there.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Eric. Thanks for having me.
Right.
Thanks, everyone.